Hey everyone, Will Brink here, brinkzone.com. And today, controversial topic, I guess. I mean, I don't, I don't find it that way, but it is a controversial topic. Statins, for whatever reason, have just always been a really controversial topic. Excuse me. So to take a little journey here, I mean, I'm going to cover my thoughts on statins because I've been getting a lot of questions on it. And I've also just been doing a lot of research on the topic of late, and I'll get into it a little bit. First, a basic general talk before we move forward is on critical thinking or critical thinkers. I think certain topics, again, expose people as not being critical thinkers. And they might be highly educated people. They may not be. I don't find that to I don't have any bearing on whether somebody really is a critical thinker. And why am I bringing this up as we're going to get statins? Well, so critical thinkers, in my view, are able to change their position based on evidence, new evidence, changing evidence. A critical thinker is somebody who is always willing to question their position based on new evidence, and they're willing to change it. And again, I don't find that really has that much to do with education levels, because again, depending on different topics, again, statins are kind of, again, almost the poster child for this. Like, people have set their position on it and just will not change it no matter what evidence comes their way. But there's other ones, and again, I'm going to say creatine. One, of course, if you know me, if you followed my stuff, I was one of the first people to actually write about the benefits of creatine, the non-gym uses of creatine in the 90s, and to this day, I will talk with somebody who's a highly educated person. Will say, "Oh, that creatine stuff's no good. It's bad for your liver and your kidneys, something." Well, that person is not a critical thinker. And I don't care how many initials they have after their name. I don't care if they're an MD, PhD, MPH, yada, yada, yada. They are not a critical thinker because the evidence is very clear that is not true. So let's come back around to statins. Okay, so I put that out there for you guys to sort of, be the critical thinker in this discussion. So my early position, now if you had asked me 20 years ago what my thoughts on statins were, I would have said, the evidence is weak, but compelling, but it's still kind of weak. The side effect profiles are disturbing and concerning. Maybe that's something somebody, really under high risk would want to consider, kind of thing. And that was about it. That was sort of where my position would have been on statins. But 20 years has gone by. We've now had like 30 years of clinical experience with statins, and the evidence presented to me has really changed my position, and it's changed a lot of people's positions. So let's move a little bit forward. But how did I'd say a couple years ago, I read papers all day long. There's only so much stuff I can read up on. I kind of put statins kind of away for a long time. But a couple of years ago, I really, my own age, my own concerns, again, I think, again, there's sort of a lot of questions and stuff. A couple of years ago, I started to really get back to researching the topic. Again, I don't come to these conclusions quickly or easily. If I come to a hard conclusion about something, position on something that I know that my followers or the people that know me are going to depend on, it doesn't come quickly. It's going to be a long time coming, especially if it's something as controversial, as nuanced, and statins to a degree are somewhat nuanced. I won't come to this quickly. So what I'm giving you has been a few years of really researching the topic. I've been following closely about 5 or 6 docs that I really know their stuff. These are research level cardiologists, lipidologists. Yes, that is a thing. Lipidologist is a very high specialty. I have been following them and going back and forth with them and reading the papers they present. Also posting papers and kind of bouncing it off of them, and sometimes pushing them. I don't always come to the exact same conclusions they do, but I will say that these are very smart people. And again, I always cross-reference, their claim against another one. I'll read the papers, and not only do I read papers, I often will read the sources that are in the papers. That is, if you have a science background, medical background, you're used to reading published research, you see they're sourced, obviously. Well, I tend to read the paper, and I read the paper sources. Not always, but I will probably go, because a lot of times, again, you have to be careful even with published, especially like meta-analysis and type of things. I mean, they'll source. Sometimes what people don't realize is that the source that they use does not always support what they're claiming. They may say it, and you go read the same paper that they sourced, and you'll say that doesn't say that. So you do have to really go down a rabbit hole if you really want to be thorough. So I've done that, like I say, for a couple of years now, and I really only feel like I've just gotten a real handle on this topic recently enough to make a video where I felt comfortable with it. So let's go down a couple. I mean, obviously, some of the hard positions, again, people have on statins are just really outdated. And there's just a lot of conflicting stuff out of there. And, of course, there's always the comment by somebody that would be, well, why don't they just do it the old-fashioned way, lowering the risk of cardiovascular disease and strokes and such with, good diet and exercise and some supplements and so forth. And, versus, the magic pill. And I agree. I utterly agree with them. I've said the same thing. I'm altering my position a bit, but that goes without saying that people absolutely should do everything in their power, the old-fashioned way of exercise and a good diet and all that to, lower their risk of heart disease, for sure. But what has also become really apparent, and we'll get into that a little bit, is that is often not enough. Many people are not willing to do it, as you know, and even people that are willing to do that, it's often not enough. And I'm going to give you a specific example of that in just a minute. So what I actually did is I'm actually going to post some vids from 3 different doctors so that I don't have to go into details. I think if you want to go down the rabbit hole yourself, you can go watch these videos. I highly recommend them. So my current position on statins is they clearly reduce the risk of cardiovascular disease and strokes and so forth. That at this point is just undeniable. And I'm going to give you good information on that for those who want to. Now, the other thing about my personal current positions on statins also is that the pleiotropic effects of statins are really interesting. And again, all that means, pleiotropic really is just a fancy term for something that has other effects separate from what it's the main reason you're using it. You're taking a statin, you think you're just taking it obviously to lower, let's say, cholesterol, LDL-C, ApoB. I'm not going to get too heavy into the jargon. But what we have found is that they have all kinds of other effects. One of the key effects to statins is they lower inflammation. Now, I just did an entire video on inflammation, on the importance of inflammation with a focus on heart disease. So I'm not going to go down that too much. I'm going to post it underneath if you want to go watch that. But so, in fact, one of the doctors, I'm going to post his video. He's seems to be more convinced that actually the main benefit of statin is the lower inflammatory effect, even over the LDL lowering effect. I don't necessarily agree. I will tell you there's other people that don't agree. But to be honest with you, I don't care. If it's having benefits, if you're controlling atherogenic ApoB particles and you're getting a inflammation lowering effect, all the better. Frankly, I obviously from a scientist point of view, we want to know mechanisms, we want to know pathways, we need to know. But for the average person, I don't care, right? So, but the pleiotropic effects of statins are pretty interesting. The key one, I think, is the inflammatory effects. But they also improve nitric oxide. They improve endothelial function. There's a number of really interesting effects from statins, and I'm going to explain something a little more interesting. So first video, okay, let me go back a little bit again about my positions. Another reason my position has changed from, I would say, neutral, even slightly negative on statins to be much more positive is that, again, there are better statins. There's much better statins than there were, 20 years ago, that have very minimal side effects to no side effects at lower doses. They're much more targeted. They seem much more targeted, and they have much more pleiotropic effects. And I'll give you the specific statin, the one that pops up almost every time for that. So don't worry, you don't have to even do the homework. I'm going to literally tell you. All right, so the first video I'm going to post is from a Dr. Brewer. And Dr. Brewer is a self-proclaimed sort of anti-statin, was a bit of an anti-statin kind of guy, was not a big fan of statins also time ago. By his own admission, he was a poster boy for doing it right, exercised, good diet, literally his medical specialty was prevention and so forth. And he had an intima thickness test done, which is they have a scan your neck, which basically your carotid arteries. And it's a great test, by the way. It's a non-invasive test to see if you've got any soft or hard plaque, depending on how they do it. Anyway, he went and had this done, fully expecting to be, perfect arteries. And much to his dismay and surprise, he had plaque. He had the arteries of a 70-plus-year-old, and this guy was in his 50s. So he was one of these people that did everything right and still had plaque. He was surprised and dismayed. And he ended up changing some things. He also added a statin, and he actually reversed his plaque quite a bit. Now, there's always been some controversy about that. They claim you can't. I'll leave that to you watching his vid. My point being, here's a guy who clearly knows what he's doing as far as the nutrition and exercise and all that, did all the right things, and sort of by his own admission gave in and added a statin and had, along with some other things, but had really beneficial effects. And he has other videos on statins. The only thing I'd say about Dr. Brewer is that he seems very strongly positioned on the benefits of statins in being more on the anti-inflammatory effects, the pleiotropic effects versus the LDL lowering effects. I think that's probably a bit outside of the mainstream position. But again, so what? I mean, who from our position, your position, my position, who cares, right? If it's beneficial, great. How it works, frankly, is probably not even that important. But that's a bit of a debate. I wouldn't. What seems absolutely essential for preventing cardiovascular disease and strokes and so forth is reducing, specifically targeting ApoB, are the most atherogenic, and mitigating and addressing inflammation, of which I have a whole video. So I would watch that video. Second one, and this is where we're going to get. This is where things get, I think, most interesting, is Dr. Stanfield. Now, Dr. Stanfield, again, good guy. I don't know him personally, but I mean, he's a channel I like. I generally recommend Dr. Stanfield's channel. He's, again, big on working out, young guy, good diet, takes supplements, very, evidence-based guy. I may or may not always agree with his sort of conclusions on a supplement or whatever, but anyway. Now, Dr. Stanfield, doing all that, has low LDL, still added in a statin. Now, why is that? Well, he explains it very well. He takes two drugs. One is to lower DHT. Again, he wants to do it while he's young and not and reduce his risk of prostate cancer. That's another topic for another day. But he has added in a low-dose statin, even as a healthy guy without any heart disease, with already good lipid numbers. Now, why is he doing that? Because he, along with a lot of other docs and some anti-aging specialists I know, some very smart people are actually taking low-dose statins as an anti-aging drug because of all of these benefits we now know exist in the last few decades. He's not the only one. I know a number of them, and frankly, a lot of them don't even talk about it because they just don't want to hear the nonsense from the sort of anti-statin crowds. But anyway, I know a handful of them. Now, like I say, Dr. Stanfield explains why he added in a low-dose statin, even though he does all the things right, even though his ApoB is low or his LDL-C is low, and so forth. So you have to understand that there are a number of people in the medical scientific community that are viewing statins at this point as a legit anti-aging drug with long-term benefits. Finally, the third vid I'm going to post is from a Dr. Carvalho. Highly recommended channel. Really like Dr. Carvalho's information. Very evidence-based guy. No hyperbole. He strikes me as a critical thinker. That is, he strikes me as the kind of person that, again, given evidence, new evidence, whatever, he takes that evidence and will change his position. Update it, whatever. But his information, I think, generally is really good. But the one I'm going to post for you guys is basically he goes over do statins work. I know out there's a lot of really conflicting information. I can totally see somebody watching this video and going, gee, I just saw another video, just read another article that basically painted statins as the devil and the worst thing ever, and so on and so forth. Anyone saying that is wrong. I'm just going to put that out. Two, if you want Dr. Carvalho does a really good job of taking complicated information, distilling it down to be really easy to understand. And so for those who just want to watch a good video by somebody I think is really qualified to explain, do they work? And obviously his focus is on cardiovascular disease versus the pleiotropic stuff. But that's a really good video if you just want to sort of understand what's going on with them and do they work, how they work. Topics such as relative risk versus absolute risk. That's a big one in the statin world. He covers all that. So those will be the three videos. Which statin? The statin that you will see popping up continuously with people that are taking it for not just the benefits of LDL-C and ApoB lowering, but also it seems to be probably the best one, if not the best one, for pleiotropic effects is Crestor, which is rosuvastatin. That's what Dr. Brewer added. That's what Dr. Stanfield takes. That's what all of the, again, anti-aging research people that I know who are all already in good shape, already doing all the right things before anybody says, they're just taking the magic pill. That's what they take. The thing about Crestor or rosuvastatin also, you can take it at very low doses. I mean, you can get benefits from rosuvastatin as low as like 2.5 milligrams. Most people take 5, which is very low and way lower than any sort of side effect. You don't generally see, if you're going to see any side effects at all, I'm going to do a brief discussion on side effects, but there's other better people to, like I say, Dr. Carvalho has videos and so forth. But, you don't generally see any side effects with rosuvastatin till above like 20 milligrams. I think the highest is 40. At those doses, you will. It's real strong stuff. And the only time generally, but you're not going to see side effects at 2.5 milligrams or 5 milligrams. And that's a really common sort of preventative dose. And some people will, get really dramatic effects from 5 milligrams of rosuvastatin, if they're taking it because their cardiologist or their doc wants them to take it. But even, like I say, even as low as 2.5 milligrams, you'll see benefits. If you're somebody who is at higher risk, that is, you have elevated ApoB and LDL-C and so forth, whether we're talking triglycerides, that's a discussion you should have with your doc. That's a different matter. I'm just sort of throwing out the fact that people may be kind of interested to learn that there's people are taking it as a straight up drug for preventative, as like I say, having sort of a variety of anti-aging benefits and so forth. Now, again, in addition to, of course, inflammation, there is, of course, things like blood pressure. There is elevated glucose, oxidative stress. These are all risk factors for cardiovascular disease. It's not. I tend to think that just like totally putting blinders on and just focusing on LDL-C is a mistake. But this data is very strong that if you get those down low enough, even with the other risk factors, well, except for inflammation, but your risk of cardiovascular disease goes down quite dramatically. And I will post also a recent review paper that came out, very good, easy to read, not very long review paper for, again, that people want to kind of go down that. And there's also some. I don't know if you're not following this, there's really been quite an improvement in the introduction of non-statin cholesterol-lowering medications. There's now, I don't know, 4 or 5 of them, and they're quite effective. And that's a different topic. I think the one and the risk factor that I sort of see inflammation. I sort of put it under this sort of larger picture in terms of things like again, oxidative stress, elevated glucose, prediabetes. All of those cross talk to each other. They're all part, in a sort of a cycle. Oxidative stress causes inflammation. Inflammation will compound oxidative stress and around you going. So when I say inflammation, I kind of mean it as a grand sort of an overall picture. And again, I have a full video that you can go down there. Okay, so that is my position on statins currently. Maybe for some people, that's a surprise that I have this position. I don't know. Again, I'm an evidence-based person. As a critical thinker, I will look at the evidence and I will change my positions on something. And I am very much in line with current thinking of people that, again, also critical thinkers. And none of the people that I link to, by the way, before anybody even bothers saying, none of the people I link to make a penny off of, recommending statins or using statins. The non-critical thinkers will just dismiss a thing out of hand and go, he's obviously paid by pharma, yada, yada, yada. So don't be that person, okay? All right, so that's my position. As you can see over my shoulder, whichever direction here, brought to you, of course, by Alpha Joe. Tastes good, feels good, it's good for you. Call it the trifecta of win. And I'll see you all on the ringside.